When European settlers came to Canada, African people also came, seeking hope and freedom. In the 1600s, some settled in what would turn out to be the city of Halifax. After the American Revolution, larger groups of black people came to Nova Scotia, where they were promised freedom. This is the story of Africville. Africville was one of the oldest black settlements in Canada and a symbol of black resilience in the face of marginalization. It was also a site of cultural and religious expression. Africville's history is an important part of Canada as it shows the strength and diversity of the black experience in this country. In 1836, a road connected the Africville area to Halifax, where the name Africville became widely used because black families lived there. Africville was a safe place for black people, shielding them from the discrimination they faced in Halifax. It was also a place of struggle, where people fought for their rights against racism and environmental injustice. Residents opened small businesses that catered to the community needs, such as carpenters and tailors. Some fished in the nearby waters, and some ran farms. In 1849, the Seaview African United Baptist Church opened to serve its 80 residents. The church was not only a place of worship, but also a center of social and educational activities for the settlement. However, it wasn't all paradise. They all paid taxes but didn't receive any of the services that the government provided to Halifax. For the entire history of Africville, they didn't have running water, paved roads, electricity, police forces, public transport, and recreational facilities. This was a clear example of racial inequality that the black community faced in Nova Scotia. In 1854, the community was split by a railway line that destroyed several homes. The residents, who belonged to a minority group, demanded fair compensation and raised concerns about the train's safety and pollution. However, the railway project continued to take more land from them without regard for their opinions. The residents were ignored because of their race. The city of Halifax treated Africville as a dumping ground for unwanted facilities. In 1854, the city built Rockhead Prison near Africville. In 1870, the city dug a pit for human waste disposal next to Africville. The city also placed the Infectious Diseases Hospital in Africville. These facilities showed how little respect and care Halifax had for residents of Africville.
Later in the 1950s, a landfill was planned to be built. Since the white residents of Halifax strongly opposed having it in their vicinity, the city ignored the voices of the residents of Africville and built the dump right next to them, a clear sign of the lack of respect the city had for Africville and its residents. In 1917, the Halifax explosion happened, which destroyed a good chunk of Halifax. Millions of dollars poured into the city, but none of that money went into helping reconstruct Africville. Water, electricity, and sewage systems were still non-existent, even when the city approved the plans to build them in 1962. By the 1960s, many whites began to view Africville as the slums next to the dump. They still didn't have any basic services, and their town was looking dilapidated. The city began plans to demolish the community and move the residents to other parts of Halifax. Residents resisted this, yet the city ignored them once again. The city began tearing down homes and forcing residents to relocate. In the middle of the night, the church, which had been the beating heart of Africville, was destroyed. In 1969, the final house was torn down. Many former residents were only compensated with a few months of rent or a down payment. They faced difficulties being accepted elsewhere because they were black. Africville was an example of systemic racism that affected the lives and identities of its residents. Politicians constantly ignored their requests and complaints, provided no public services, and placed a number of undesirable facilities near Africville that posed serious threats to the health and safety of their residents. It's important to acknowledge and remember the injustices of Africville. We should listen to their stories and respect their culture and identities. We need to recognize the historical and ongoing discrimination of certain minority groups and support their efforts to fight for a more inclusive and equitable society for all people.
More than just recognizing these historical wrongs, Africville calls us to act on historical injustices and provide equal opportunities for all. We must work for a better future where the past does not limit us. This requires ongoing education and awareness to create a diverse and multicultural Canada. Africville was destroyed and displaced its people. Halifax apologized in 2010 for its discrimination and pledged to rebuild the Seaview Church and set up a trust fund. The former residents and their allies appreciated the apology, but wanted more measures to deal with displacement and marginalization effects. Africville's legacy shows the strength and identity of Black Canadians who faced hardship and oppression. It motivates us to overcome challenges and value our culture. It also reminds us to respect Africville's legacy and its lessons. This legacy supports diversity and multiculturalism for a better and fairer Canada. Now, as band students, we have to mention the musical components woven with Africville. They enjoyed various musical genres such as gospel, blues, jazz, and often hosted concerts in their church. Some of the famous musicians who performed include Duke Ellington. Music for them was a way of bonding with family and friends. Social injustice affects our Indigenous nations. Africville residents face segregation and discrimination in Halifax. Similarly, Indigenous peoples suffered residential schools, the Indian Act, the 60s Scoop, and other policies that erased their cultures and families. They were too stereotyped negatively. Africville holds annual reunion of former residents and descendants who share stories, memories, and music. The Africville Museum organizes educational programs to promote the town's history. The museum displays artifacts, photographs, and oral histories which celebrate and honor Africville's history and legacy. As we conclude this journey through the story of Africville, let us watch a brief video that captures its essence. Africville symbolizes resilience and courage. We want to leave you with these questions. How does my community's history shape its present? How can I participate in my community's decision-making? How can I learn about and honor the marginalized voices in history? Reflect on these questions after you finish this video. Thank you for watching.